That was one hell of a main event. I could honestly watch these guys standing in front of each other all day. The stylistic pairing, as it reads on paper, between the patient, clean, and more strategic Israel Adesanya and the overwhelming physicality and precise finishing of Alex Pereira. When the UFC 287 headliner actually came to its close, once I picked my jaw up off the floor, my instant reaction was actually one of disappointment because of the fact that the show was over. But what exactly went down when Adesanya managed to reclaim his middleweight title? And how will this affect things moving forward in terms of the future and both men's legacies? Well, let's start with the fight itself. I totally got my prediction backwards. I actually picked Pereira to come out more confident and to find a way to shut Izzy down earlier, a round 3 TKO or KO being my exact call. And in many ways he did come out with a much greater intensity, especially in round 2, using his leg kicks early and often to really add the damage up on Adesanya. But Israel also fought a different fight, competing with a level of urgency that matched the very clear stakes to his career. And this time, the narrative that Pereira has only had big, definitive, singular moments in this rivalry, rather than full performances, just won't hold up. Poatan was very competitive in there, and I would argue that up until Izzy landed big, he was the one who was really doing the best work. Not by a far distance, but it was those leg kicks, and every time he cornered his opponent up against the fence, I think it happened twice, yeah, it was a pretty terrifying sight. But Adesanya managed to use the confidence of the champion against him, and man did he find the perfect punch to capitalize. And all things considered, whether he had a choice in the matter or not, Adesanya's willingness to trade in the pocket with Pereira was pretty commendable, and that was the thing that won him the fight in the end. The fact that he did live up to his word. He came in there meaner, and whether you like him and his persona or not, when the time came to actually put it on the line, he most certainly delivered. And it's a good thing because in contrast to the usual rhythm of Adesanya's fights, this time I think the longer he spent in there with Pereira, the more time that Pereira was actually going to take over. Those leg kicks were no joke. A factor that, you never know, could have already been causing more of a need for haste from Adesanya in a contest that was already a do-or-die fight. And to put Alex Pereira out cold like that, that is one hell of a redemptive arc. That sequence in itself was almost the perfect analogy for where Adesanya stood. Backed into a corner, the imminent danger of another brutal loss in front of him, with the world generally expecting that he was about to drop, but he didn't. And the way he immediately turned things around was truly wild. Now the scores are even in MMA at 1-1, but I mean, that's not the story here, not the one that most people are going to latch onto. Given that these two have now fought a grand total of 4 times, and Alex Pereira has won 3 of them, including 2 finishes, does he actually deserve this MMA trilogy fight, or fight number 5 overall, whatever you want to call it? Well, Dana White doesn't seem too pushed about it, and in another bizarre instance of anti-promotion, to follow the Kevin Holland Masvidal thing from the press conference, he hinted that Poatan's future may lie at light heavyweight. We all knew that Pereira's time at 185 pounds wouldn't last forever, but that's certainly a strange move from Dana, given that the trilogy fight is right there, and would undoubtedly sell, especially now that Adesanya has at least 1 win over everyone else in the top 5. In a world where Nunes versus Peña 3 exists, Adesanya versus Pereira 5 isn't too outlandish. On a quick side note, if you're enjoying this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel now to stay up to date with all of our weekly uploads. We're also starting to push out exclusive content through our Patreon and YouTube membership program, so if you want to avail of that, check out the links in the description below. Anyway, if all goes well for Poatan up a division, and he somehow captures promotional gold, there's a super fight there, but I don't know, that's a lot of ifs. 205 pounds is going to be tough for Alex Pereira, not because there's a massive amount of insanely good wrestlers up there, but I do think that the physicality he brings at middleweight is a huge strength, something that helps him bridge the experience gap between himself and everyone else. The Adesanya fight is an outlier situation that works in his favor, another former kickboxer, or at least it was up until last night's fight. He is getting older, and to be honest, I don't know if this is a controversial opinion or one that everyone's talking about, but coming up on his 36th birthday, are we seeing an Alex Pereira that's a bit too chinny, a guy who might be exposed up at light heavyweight for this reason? Maybe, maybe not. But either way, if the UFC don't opt to make another fight between these two, then yes, he will likely get a top 10 opponent at 205 pounds next time around. So for Israel Adesanya, how exactly should we look at this rivalry now, seeing as he has finally gotten himself a win? Well, there were a few comments on our last video asking how their dynamic could be considered a rivalry at all, if one guy was 3-0 over the other. It's not an opinion I agree with or put much weight on at all, but I suppose by your metric, the second that Izzy connected on that knockout shot, this became a rivalry for the first time. So now where that rivalry stands is the question. See, the weird thing about this saga, the fact that there were so many asterisks beside each fight up until this point, point, the decision in fight 1, the general flow of both the second and the third fight, and how they favoured Adesanya for large portions up until the knockout, I don't think it's any less strange now that the so-called order has been restored with this victory from Israel. Given what's already happened, this rivalry is not going to result in a clear-cut answer, one that's going to satisfy everyone. But I do believe in the whole idea of you're only as good as your last fight, and given that Adesanya just won, I think he will be able to move on with his career and feel some real positive momentum, even if he never balances the numbers with his great rival. And I'll point out that I didn't like Israel Adesanya's demeanor through fight week, and the more I saw of him, the more I hoped for a Pereira win. That's just me as a fan, and that didn't change on fight night. The fan in me wanted to see Poatan succeed, not necessarily out of some venom or hatred for Stylebender, but just because of Pereira's story, because of his fighting style, and whatever else. But I see these comments on any video of the highlight or the post-fight interview saying 1 and 3, like it has already become the new slogan for bringing Adesanya back down to earth. But come on, MMA is a sport so complex and nuanced that people can always find an angle for their bullshit. I don't think the numbers matter too much as they relate to Adesanya and Pereira, because we just saw Poatan get KO'd. Adesanya is the champion once more, and competitive sagas like this don't necessarily need a black or white answer. And if this is the end of the rivalry, it does have to go down as one of the most unique and highly intriguing rivalries we've ever had the pleasure of witnessing in this sport. And yes, it has always been a rivalry. Come on. Anyway, that'll just about do it for this video. But what did you make of this huge knockout victory for the last Stylebender? And what do you see as the best next fight for each man? If you do want to help in supporting the channel, liking the video and subscribing would do wonders. Thank you for watching.